So continuing on with the bowl, we've got our paint layers, and I'm just going to click on the paint mode here, and we now see our paint layers. Right now we have no images applied to this. We could create a new image here. We could also just use our paint tools. If you remember from the painting, if we select it, it just automatically knows, hey, he doesn't have a paint layer, he's got to have one, so it pops up the information. If we were going to go in and create one from our paint layers, we can go into a new layer, pops up that same the same little window, asks us for a name. We could call this our color spots, asks us for a size for the image, so we can select on the size, asks us for a file format type, so we can select on that depending on what the need is for the project, and then the channel, and we're going to use our diffuse because it's just going to be a color. So you can see in here it gives us a group, and the group has the diffuse maps inside of it. And if we go into here, we'll go to our paint tools tab, we'll go to our paint brush, and let's get something kind of fun for a brush in here. So we have some neat little color traits. How about we've got a mossy look, or actually a stony look, looks kind of cool. Let's use this one. So we use this one. The stamp spacing is there. Let's see what we get. There we are. So we are making this into a tough looking bowl. And of course we can always look at our UV view, and we can see how that's being applied to the UVs. But now let's say we've got one layer, but we don't want to just keep painting on top of that one layer. Again, these are just layers. We want to have them as separate as possible, and at the same time, to manage and control the detail that we put onto it. So let's just add another layer, and this one's going to be our cow color, and it's going to be in our diffuse channel, which is going to group it right in here. Now we can also move these up and down, and this is basically the stack, what gets drawn on top of the other. So if we have one on top of the other, for instance, now if we go in, I'm going to turn off my stamp so I have a flat color, and I'm just going to paint on him. Now as I paint on him, you'll notice, because I moved my layer below it, it paints underneath, so to speak, our spots. Now if I were to, for instance, move my cow color above, then all I'm going to see is the white, because my spots are under that layer. So just like in image editing software, we're just stacking up one layer on top of the other. If I go below it, then my spots renders on top of my color. And in our UV view, we can see how that applies to it. If I'm selecting on the different ones, I'll see the individual effects. I can also turn off a particular layer just by using our toggle option and our locking option so that we don't mess with one of the layers. Okay, so you can see how this can be a great part to the development of a texture image. And then let's go ahead and add one more in here. Let's call this, we call this our face detail, and we'll leave it in our diffuse channel. And our face detail, of course, new one starts on top, so that works great. We could zoom in over here. We're going to make our brush a little smaller. Remember, that's B. Holding B, left mouse click and drag to change that, or over here in the properties menu. And we could just select on a color. We'll do something simple. We'll just get some color in here so we can see. There we go. And maybe he's got some spots around his nose. We can see where some of the textures may only affect one small little portion of the map. We're not looking at trying to take up the whole, it's just each piece, where do you need the details, and then giving a map for those details. Alright. Now the other map types that we have a diffuse. We also have a specular and a gloss. We'll look at specular, and that would probably be as deep as we go with that one for now. We'd cover more of the others in greater depth in additional videos. For the specular, this allows us to paint on a highlight to our model. I'm just going to select my color and turn it to black. And I'm going to increase the size of my brush. Now notice what I'm doing. I'm brushing on a black, so I am, in effect, I'm taking out some of the highlight that's on the model, even though we do have a white on there. And you're able to brush on highlights, you're able to brush on dark spots. We're going to change this up to a white, so the dark is where you get very little specular lighting. The black, the white is where you get more of that specular lighting when it crosses across. There you go. You see how that goes? We'll leave it in this view with a light on there so you can see it. I'm going to change my stamp spacing off. That way I get a nice, better line. And as you can see, it's just basically painting in a highlight line so that as we turn and the light goes off, the highlight in that area changes. So this gives you a lot of control on painting the highlights on your object without having to go back and forth. You can see it as you work on it. So let's say that we wanted these areas, the rocky areas, to be a little more of a highlight along their edges, and then we wanted our mortar in between to be a little bit darker. So if the mortar was nice and bright, we could always change our color to something darker, like a black, and that way we reduce that highlight. And this way, when the lighting starts to cross it, we get that nice little shine going across, and we keep the low area dark the way we want it. And again, this is just using a specular map. You can make multiple specular maps in it. So a nice powerful way of using it, and of course you can also work with your colors and things like that to create specular color if you need to. Alright, and that gives us a good look at working with our texture maps, our paint layers for Mudbox, and creating multiple diffuse layers, as well as working with the placement of them. And as a side note also for the strength, just like with our sculpting tools, we can then adjust how much we see of each with our transparency here. Alright, and then also with our specular layer, so that we can adjust the amount of shine or sheen that's going to come across on an object with the lighting. A lot of great powerful tools right there, and a lot of fun to work with, so be sure to try them out, both the sculpting tools, the paint tools, the sculpting layers, and the paint layers. Play around with them for a little while, and then when we get back, we're going to start working on a basic object, and then we'll move into our actual practical application object and take all of what we've been learning and apply it to a bigger project. Alright, so have some fun with the tools for a little bit.